Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to our webinar today, Association Pools and High-Touch Common Areas. I am Kathy Roth-Johnson, the CG for the CEI Heartland chapter. I will be your administrator for today's webinar. We will begin by speaking to some of our local officials from the city of Creve Coeur, Missouri, and the city of O'Fallon, Missouri, and then move on to the presentation from some of our valued CEI business partners. I apologize. For some reason, my thing isn't working. Hold on a second. Well, today's presenters. I would like to introduce our panelists for today and thank them for being here. Today we have Barry Glantz, the mayor of Creve Coeur, Missouri. Thomas Drabel, the director of public relations for the city of O'Fallon, Missouri. Shannon Smallwood, the aquatics coordinator for the city of O'Fallon, Missouri. Then we also have two of our CEI business partners presenting. Jan Mullaney from Surf Pro of West Kirkwood, Sunset Hills, Fenton, South Baldwin, Overland, and Cool Valley, and Brett Sheldon from Pro Pool Management and Service. Our other CEI experts will be available on the Q&A session later at the end. We have Stephen Davis from Carmody McDonald answering the legal questions, and Jim Reepson from Daniel and Henry Company answering the insurance questions. Now I would like to remind all of our panelists to please mute their speakers if they're not speaking. Barry, Thomas, and Shannon, will you please join us through video? And we will start with Barry. Barry, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for this on the city of Creve Coeur?
Good morning, Kathy. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. My name is Barry Glantz. I'm the mayor of Creve Coeur. I was first elected in April of 2012, re-elected in April of 2015, and April of 2018. So believe it or not, I'm on my 9th year, and I am term limited at the end of this term, which ends next April. I've been involved in Creve Coeur politics since the early 90s. I was on the city council and on the planning and zoning commission. In my real life, I was an architect, and my company was purchased by McBride & Son Homes in 2013. So happy to join you this morning.
Thanks for being here. Thomas, could you please share your video and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Tom Drabel. I'm the communications and PR director for the city of O'Fallon. I've been with the city since 2008. Kind of do a little bit of everything. So in my position, I work with all of our various departments. So definitely involved in kind of the reopening that we're going through in all aspects of it. But the big focus I have then also is the communication with the residents, getting the word out, answering questions through social media, and just kind of keeping that interaction with our residents and handling some of the questions that we get from residents saying, you know, so-and-so isn't socially distancing on the playground and this kind of stuff. So we've been addressing those kind of concerns that have come in as we've gone through all this.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Shannon, can you please join us on through video? Technical difficulties maybe. Shannon is the aquatic. Oh, there you are.
Sorry. I was muted.
You're fine.
Rookie error there. So I'm Shannon with the city of O'Fallon. I've been with them since the age of 17 as a lifeguard and have been full-time with them for 7 years. So I oversee both of their aquatics facilities. We have one indoor facility and one outdoor facility. Between those two facilities, I oversee 120 part-time lifeguards and leadership staff. I have my current certified pool operator, and we're an Ellis and Associates aquatics facility. So that's kind of what I do for O'Fallon.
Great. I'm going to move on to the questions. Shannon, if you can turn back on your video so we can see you too, so we can just have an open discussion about some of these questions. For the attendees, we had sent the questions to Barry, Thomas, and Shannon beforehand. So here are some questions that we have for the local officials. It can just be an open sharing. How do you guys determine if we can open a public common space, and who should we consider the legal authority, and who else should they consult?
Are you looking for anybody in particular to start?
Let's start with you, Barry. That's great.
Great, thank you. The city of Creve Coeur typically has followed St. Louis County guidelines. That said, there are some things we've also done differently. We do not have a public pool, but we do have a golf course and a community ice skating rink. Our ice rink is closed right now. We shut that down a number of weeks ago. We are looking at possibly opening that up, but under county guidelines, we're trying to figure out how to only allow 10 people at a time in our ice rink. Our golf course is open, as are our public parks. We have maintained and kept our parks open. When St. Louis County closed their parks, we found that people really do enjoy, and by and large have complied with social distancing requirements. Same with our golf course, which has been a source of a very popular place for people to gather during this whole coronavirus stay-at-home order. We do have people encouraging social distancing. Our golf course is open for walking only and has been very, very busy over the last few weeks.
We're similar in O'Fallon. We have different facilities through our parks in particular, and we've kept our parks open. We're under the jurisdiction of the St. Charles County Health Department relating to all this, and they've been actually very flexible in allowing the cities to make their own determination on what they want to open and what they don't, as long as social distancing rules are in place. So what we kind of did is we did a gradual closing. We've kept our parks open completely throughout the whole process, but we've closed individual features of our parks. But we kind of did that gradually. We let people try them out and see if they could continue social distancing, monitored the activity. And then when we saw places that were either getting overcrowded or just social distancing wasn't going on, we started shutting those down. So for example, tennis courts, our skate park, and our playgrounds kind of gradually shut down. And now we're in the process of gradually reopening those. So on Monday, we reopened our playground, or excuse me, not our playgrounds yet. We reopened our tennis courts and our basketball courts. Next Monday, we'll reopen our skate park. And then on June 1st, we will reopen our playgrounds at that point. And so it's been just kind of a gradual step-by-step process. We have signage at all of our locations talking about what the rules are. The biggest, as you might expect, we do get a lot of phone calls from people saying, I live behind this and you know, people aren't social distancing there. So we've done things like we've had police officers, when they're just, sitting in their cars waiting and doing paperwork, we have them parked nearby some of these features and things like that to try to enforce them. But we also have like a disc golf course. We didn't close the disc golf course, but we did take the baskets out so that people weren't actually touching the baskets. They just have a pole that they can hit for the hole. So little modifications like that where we could. Shannon, you want to talk about Renaud Center?
Yes, so on Monday, we opened the Renaud Center, which is O'Fallon's Recreation Center. We're currently only open for our members. So that's kind of helped with not getting a flood of people. So right now we're not taking any daily admissions. We have a number of signs posted. We try to get out to the community like what the expectations were, what to expect when they came in. Each guest that comes into the facility, they are getting their temperatures checked. We are not requiring a mask. They have that option. All employees are wearing masks and behind plexiglass. As far as the pool goes, we've have limited deck furniture. So we've spread out our deck furniture. We have like one chair every 6 feet. We're currently only doing lap swim and we have one swimmer per lane. And then we're currently offering aqua aerobics with a limited number of participants that we will allow in class, and they have to social distance in that area. As far as our workout center, we kind of shut off every other machine to keep with that 6 feet social distance. And in the gym, it's one person per basketball hoop. So we have those restrictions. We're kind of, our motto is start small and then gradually go from there, kind of like Tom had mentioned before. So.
Do any of you have any other rules or regulations or restrictions that you have coming up, or for the common areas and public areas? Anything else you want to add?
Our government center is closed to the public, although we have a large lobby area where people can interact with social distancing with city staff. So all of our Creve Coeur city services are still available to all of our residents. Our tennis courts are open. Like I said, we're trying to figure out how to open our ice rink again, and our police officers are interacting with the public again with social distancing recommendations. They're trying not to be overly heavy-handed. We're trying to all work through this new normal together, and I think that's sort of a very, very important policy to avoid any heavy-handed approach, and make sure that we're all doing what's best for the community.
We will actually be reopening our city hall on Monday, but there'll be very strict restrictions in place in terms of the way our building works. It actually works out really well because we can kind of divide it in half, and the public will only have access to one portion of the building, and all of our staff will be interacting with the public from behind plexiglass. So there, even no matter what the issue is, our staff will always stay on one side of the plexiglass versus the public access areas. In terms of, our police department, they've been obviously supplied a substantial number of PPE, so they're if they need it, they have masks and gloves and other things available to them. They also, same thing, we've tried as Creve Coeur, really not to get heavy-handed about this. We've had, like I said, we'll put an officer near a parks facility just to kind of get it in people's minds to think about it, but we really don't want the officer even have to get out of the car and say, hey guys, stop doing it, unless it's really an issue. It's more just keep it in your mind that somebody's there, they're watching, but we don't want to cause problems for anybody. We want people to, be as responsible as they can and try to, self-police as much as they can, but a little reminder here and there doesn't hurt. In terms of things like our businesses and stuff like that, St. Charles County never actually shut down any particular businesses. They left it to the businesses to decide whether they considered themselves essential or not. And we just went along with that. A lot of, restaurants and stuff shut down completely. Some went to carry out only. We're starting to see some reopen now, even dining rooms. So it's kind of a mixture of where everybody is from that kind of standpoint.
How would you guys suggest that like a community association or an HOA, if they have common areas in your cities, how they should enforce the rules, and as far as if they should get the police involved, what's their responsibility to police their community. Do you guys have any recommendations for that?
You know, go ahead, Barry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. From our standpoint, you know, we really we're obviously available if an HOA wants to call us and say, you know, come out and remind some people, but we don't want to be the COVID police as much as possible. We will if we have to, but we really don't want the first call to be to the police department to say, come on out and try to get people separated here if we can avoid that. You know, signage is a big thing. You know, and part of the issue that we saw in the beginning and we're expecting to see more is people not really understanding. You see 3 kids playing on a piece of equipment and somebody says, oh, these 3 kids are playing together. Well, those 3 kids happen to be brother and sister. So they can do that. They don't have to social distance from each other. But when you're the nosy neighbor sitting up on the hill watching this, you don't necessarily know that information. So, you know, that's where it's really a challenge, I think, because there's just not, no one really knows until you go and ask the question. So as much as possible, I think educating your public, your neighborhoods ahead of time, hey, here's the rules, here's what you need to know, get that word out, and really, as much as possible, allowing them to self-police is our preference. Of course, if there's a problem area and you need to call us, definitely do that. And in terms of, like, you know, there are situations where we've had cases where, you know, a particular guest is monopolizing areas and stuff like that. But again, all of our signage has reminders of, hey, be respectful, you know, take your turn and then move on to something else. And we haven't had too many issues with things like that. Most people people get it. They understand this is a different time. And for the most part, people have been pretty understanding of that.
I would agree with that. I think in Creve Coeur, where I'm more familiar, people have by and large been very respectful. There is a desire to interact. I think people are still doing that, and they're doing that, but they're well aware of social protocols. We have had very little need for any sort of quote official enforcement. There are a lot of people using our sidewalks. There's a lot of people walking. By and large, they're spacing appropriately. And I think a lot of what's happening is what I would consider to be market driven. People are aware of what's happening and are trying to be respectful of other the desire for people to social distance.
What are you guys doing to ensure the public safety in your communities?
Well, our police are still responding to calls. And as I said, all city functions are up and running in Creve Coeur and operating normally. We've changed our shifts, the number of people that are on shifts, and making sure that we're observing protocols. But we're functioning. The municipal functions are still happening normally. Our trash is getting picked up, recycles being picked up. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Time frames are stretched out a little bit. Similar to the other communities, our playgrounds are closed, our tennis courts are open. But for us, it's sort of business as usual. But we're doing it with less people and staggered shifts.
And we're in the same situation here. We're everything from a public standpoint, you know, outside of the obvious closures really hasn't changed. All of our municipal services are going as they always have. We have made modifications on the back end to help protect our employees and keep our employees safe. But from the eyes of our residents, we've tried to make it as normal as possible and not let them see any change in the services they expect and they deserve. Barry mentioned recycling, which brought up an interesting thing that we're seeing now, and actually it's something we're going to start pushing is because so many people are home, we're starting to see a lot of people just use their recycling container as a second trash can. And we've, in the last 2 weeks, have had several loads of recycling that had to go be taken to a dump rather than be recycled because we're getting so much contamination from people who are understandably, home renovations. They're taking out toilets and putting in new bathroom stuff, fixtures, and things like that. And it's becoming a real issue for us. So from a PR standpoint to your HOAs, to the HOAs out there, if you could remind your folks to please obey the recycling rules, because if we get a contaminated load, that entire truck's going straight to the dump, and we can't recycle anything in there. And we understand, we know people are doing this because they're stuck at home and, hey, this is something to keep me busy. But that's a little thing that we didn't really anticipate that we're starting to see an issue of. So if you would remind your residents of that, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Great point. Great point. Is there anything else you guys would like to share with our attendees about what's happening in your cities?
The one thing that I would add is I've heard from a number of residents and mostly business owners about opening up what they can and can't do. As I mentioned earlier, we are certainly not heavy-handed, and I question whether there legally actually is an enforcement clause in the stay-at-home order. But we're encouraging we're following St. Louis County guidelines. If people want to vary from that, we are encouraging them to speak to their own legal counsel.
Great.
We would agree. The other authority to talk to is your health department. When we get specific questions from businesses related to something, the health department is the legal authority for that. So, when in doubt, go directly to them, ask the question specifically, and get their answer. Work with your attorneys from there, but we'll do our best to answer the questions, but ultimately we're just giving you our interpretation of what the health department's giving us. So when in doubt, go straight to the health department and get the questions from them, get the answers from them. And a question came up of what kind of information to put on the signage. I would say put as much as you can without making the sign overwhelming. Remind people to social distance. Remind them to be respectful of others and take turns on different things. I wouldn't be afraid on certain things to put a threat in that, hey, if this doesn't occur, if you can't social distance, this will be closed again. People need to understand that there could be consequences to their actions. And that's not appropriate on everything, but especially on playground signage, to remind the parents, you need to keep your kids socially distanced. If you don't, we will have to do this. We don't want to, but we will have to. That message has resonated both on signage and also in just other communication with our residents.
Good point. We'll also cover signage when it comes to the pool later on in the presentation. Do you guys have anything else that you want to add before we move on?
Happy to answer questions later on.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to remind you guys to mute your microphones, and you guys can turn off your video right now. Now we are fortunate to have our next two presenters also be our sponsors for today. So Jan and Brett, if you guys can turn on your video, please. Jan, we'll let you go first and talk a little bit about ServPro.
Yes, I'm Jan Mullaney. I am with ServPro of West Kirkwood, Sunset Hills, Fitton, South Baldwin, Overland, and Coal Valley. ServPro's full lineup of cleanup solutions and services include 24-hour emergency services, 365 days a year. We go when and where you need us. We do fire and water damage cleanup, contents and structure for commercial and residential. We are certified mold remediators and mitigation. Our direct work lineup includes biohazard, bloodborne pathogens, crime scene, suicide, vandalism cleanup, residential and commercial air duct and HVAC cleaning, commercial and residential carpet and upholstery cleaning, deodorization, dry ice blasting, and specialty cleaning, which the COVID-19 and dealing with chronic clutterers fall underneath. The definition of a disaster is any event that disables, interrupts, or adversely affects the ability of a business to operate in a normal manner. This is when ServPro steps in to help. No job is too big, no question too small. Call on the cleanup team that the insurance industry has trusted for over 50 years.
Thanks, Jan. Brett,
Yes.
thank you for being a sponsor. Tell us a little bit about what you do at ProPool.
My remarks are not as scripted as Jan's. We're ProPool. We've been around in St. Louis for over 45 years now. We're very big in the community associations and HOAs, taking care of their pools, whether they're guarded or non-guarded. We have a big presence in St. Louis County, Jefferson, and St. Charles counties. So it's been an interesting year in terms of what we're looking at, but that's what we're here for. Anyway, we've been doing it for a long time, and we appreciate all the business of the people listening that we've had for a number of years.
Thank you guys both for sponsoring. Brett, I am going to ask you to mute yourself and stop your video for right now. Jan, I'm going to mute myself and stop my video, and I'm going to let you begin the presentation.
Yes, hi there. I'm Jan Mullaney. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for ServPro of West Kirkwood, Sunset Hills, Fenton, South Baldwin, and Overland Park and Cool Valley. I'm going to be talking to you today about high touch and common areas and the COVID-19. Next. Disinfectants being used for the cleaning of the COVID-19 virus need to be EPA registered with emerging viral pathogens and human coronavirus kill claim against COVID-19. It is important for you to understand the dwell time of the product that is being used. Dwell times vary from product to product. Dwell times and product use should be listed on the product label, and the EPA website lists the approved disinfectants. The reason it is so important for you to understand dwell times because dwell times vary due to a positive case cleanup of COVID-19 or just a preventative clean. The CDC encourages the cleaning of high-touch areas and surfaces such as counters, tabletops, doorknobs, bathroom fixtures, toilets, phones, keyboards, and tablets, and tables at a minimum. These same surfaces are mentioned in the CDC's guidelines for commercial spaces as well. Cleaning removes the soil and dirt that harbors the infectious agents, while disinfecting kills the remaining environmental pathogens. Cleaning is a necessary first step in disinfecting a surface. Both cleaning and disinfecting must be part of your scope of work and plan. The procedure for disinfecting is as follows. An area needs to be fogged or micromisted, clean surfaces, and then fogged again. Next. Restoration companies like me offer disinfection and sanitation services from preventative cleaning to cleaning after a known positive individual has been present in an area. The scope of cleaning depends on the situation. During preventative cleaning procedures, an EPA registered disinfectant is implied, and high touch areas and high traffic areas are targeted. During a confirmed case cleaning, there are cleaning protocols written by environmental hygienists, which are preferred to be followed. They lay out the scope and plan for the cleaning to be executed. Performing disinfecting after a confirmed case, this cleaning requires the maximum amount of PPE, which includes full face respirators, waterproof Tyvek suits, gloves, and shoe covers. Decontamination chambers will be utilized to limit the chance of cross-contamination from a person exiting a contaminated area. Please don't be misled. There are many companies that are marketing products that they are using that is effective on a surface for up to 2 weeks from the time of application. The EPA does not allow any product to be labeled as long-term preventative kill agents for viruses. This type of claim is referred to as a static claim. The only product that has any type of long-term claim, they are for bacteria and for mold, not for viruses like COVID-19. Also, the claims are not for disinfection. They are only for odors and stains. I have put in this last slide. It's for the CDC's guidance for implementing safety practices for workers who have had exposure to a person with a suspected or confirmed case of COVID-19 with people returning back to your work areas. Monday, I felt this would be very practical for what asymptomatic workers need to be doing. You need to pre-screen yourself by taking your temperature. You need to self-monitor. If you don't feel well, please do not come to work, or if you start feeling ill at work, please leave. You need to wear a mask for 14 days after your last exposure to a person with a suspected or confirmed case of COVID-19. Still practice the social distancing, and you need to disinfect and clean your area workspace, bathrooms, common areas, and shared electronic equipment. Some other considerations that you and your employer should be thinking about: don't share headsets or anything that comes close to your mouth or nose. Your employer should increase the frequency of cleaning in the high-touch areas. You should also try to test pilot to see if wearing masks work and if they interfere with your everyday working. And lastly, please continue the social distancing. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jan. I'm going to remind you to mute yourself and to turn your video off for right now. Thank you. Now we're on to Brett.
All right. This is just about me, what I do. Been a CA a long time, been on the board for many, many years. Now serve on events and whatever committee, programs committee we're doing right now. So anyway, very involved. But the question is, I think everyone wants to know, is the pool safe? Essentially, there's risk with anything we do in life. Is it any more dangerous this year than that? This pool itself, probably not. The things you might touch, like the gate and things like that, they're saying are. One of the things that I've been watching every day is the press release or the press conference up at the White House. And one day I had it on the radio on the way home, and the guy from the Homeland Security, which came out when there was anthrax and things being mailed out, back after 9/11, they formed a whole bioweapons study thing. And anyway, this guy was presenting, and as I drove in the car, I'm like, oh, what's going to happen with the pool? What's the deal? What are they going to say about it? Anyway, the guy basically said that COVID-19 absolutely does not like and does not last long in sunlight, humidity, and high temperatures. And I'm like, wow, he just described a swimming pool. And of course, not chlorine. But the problem with that press conference is that the same one that Trump said you should drink bleach and shine a flashlight down your throat to kill the virus. So it kind of got ruined, the message there, with a little bit of the static he presented. But well, I'm a fan, and sometimes it doesn't always come out the best way. So, I mean, really, of an environment where COVID would probably survive the least would be essentially the swimming pool. Because of the three things it really does not like are present at the swimming pool. And fourth, chlorine, it kills it as well. So I've got a chart in there. You kind of see how long it lasts. I mean, the most unsafe place is an air-conditioned building at 72 degrees with no humidity inside. So I guess the lesson is here, get outside is basically what they've been saying, and we should all do that and head to the pool. Anyway, I'm obviously biased. Until you reopen. So this was a presentation. What you're gonna see here is stuff that came from the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance in conjunction with the CDC, kind of working together to come up with and give the industry some direction on kind of, you know, how to reopen, how to open. So they kind of work together, even though, you know, all these things are, you know, they're guidelines, they're suggestions, some are requirements, and it's all going to come down to your local health department and how these things get executed. But this is the industry kind of getting out in front of this so we can all prepare for what might be on the reopen guidelines from your health department. So until you reopen, or in our case, open, basically I've highlighted kind of the big points here, and that is continue the circulation of the equipment. I think that's key. Every pool eventually will have to most likely be started this summer and circulated to keep it, or, you know, hosed out and left empty if they decide not to open, to avoid obviously diseases and mosquito-borne illnesses and things that come with that, that the health department will be on that as well. So if you have an uncovered pool that's sitting there and it's slowly turning green to black, that's gonna have to be dealt with at some point. And that's the second point, D there. And then, you know, G is kind of where we all are in the industry and HOAs and everyone right now, is just identify additional needs based on anticipated orders. This document here that we're going through pretty much gives us our anticipated orders. We have some from St. Charles County, which we'll go over later, and Jefferson County, as well as the state, but we're still, the big one out there is St. Louis County that still has not green lighted anything, and really not much visibility of what they're coming up with. And basically be ready, which is what the directions they've given us all spring is: get everything ready, test it, get them blue, and then when you're ready, you know, be ready to open quickly. But when is that? For St. Louis, everything else is green lighted for Memorial Day except for St. Louis County. Next, please. Anyway, so we're looking right now, restrictions on capacity. We have some guidelines on that. You know, everyone's got the 6-foot thing in their head. It's just a matter of what does that look like in a, you know, total circle in terms of square footage. So we're working on those numbers for every pool that will be determined. At least we're going to determine that for the HOAs, and then either, you know, make decisions on furniture or laying things out, and just actually posting a sign that basically will say, this is the capacity in the pool. And it will be a combination, since social distancing applies to in the water and out of the water. It's going to be the same formula, if you will. So in the old days, you had a deep end calculation for capacity, a shallow end capacity, and then you had a deck capacity. So it's kind of a combination of all those numbers. This one will be one number. So anyway, just, you know, when the order's lifted, the other health and sanitation requirements will be there in terms of, are we providing, and these are decisions we'll make with the HOAs and stuff, is do they want us to spray furniture, things like that, how much we're going to put out, all those good things. So anyway, just evaluate your equipment and keep it running. So that's, you know, when the order's lifted, you're ready to go. We're working on all the formulas and things that we're going to have to work with. Next, please. Okay, here's the biggest one. That's you know, social distancing and pool capacity. So 6 feet separation, we heard, like O'Fallon, that's where they're setting their chairs out. Obviously, that's, in some cases, that's going to mean you're going to lose some furniture. And in some cases, if you don't have enough supervision, maybe not even put it out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Deck spacing, 6 feet. They're saying 160 square feet per deck space, or 15 linear feet of deck. I guess that's in case you rotate the chair in a full 360. But capacity and social distancing is going to be the biggest thing to enforce this year. We'll talk a little bit about staffing and how we can make that happen. One thing out there too with social distancing is, do you allow or encourage people to bring their own furniture? That essentially, you know, takes the pool management company out of it and the HOA out of it. It takes one thing off the table in terms of maintenance, potential liability, because really it boils down to touch points. So if everyone brings their own chair from home, it's their chair, they can leave with their chair. So anyway, we're gonna, you know, work on scheduling. My guess is that a lot of things like swim team are probably not going to happen this year, because based on discussions with the health department and what they're recommending from the swimming pool, like, or swim team alliance, is that a swim team really doesn't sound like much fun. And I think swim teams are a lot for the adults in terms of what they do. So I don't see that as being much going on there this year. We're not allowing at our pools, pool parties, after hours, things like that. So first time for that ever. For non-guarded pools, this is a potential sticking point with the county is either having an HOA representative kind of, monitor the pool or some sort of video surveillance. So we're working with them on that. I mean, St. Charles County's not requiring it. St. Louis, likely will in some form, but we don't know yet. So, and that's while social distancing in order, how long does that last? No one knows. But the biggest thing here is walkways, pool capacity. Cleaning and maintenance is, it should be maintained no matter what, even if you don't open. Now, like I said, it can't be a pond or a cesspool, but it has to be either running, it can run under the cover, but there needs to be some maintenance. There's costs we can discuss with anyone in terms of if you don't open your pool, what are you looking at for additional costs next year in terms of how's it going to look? Essentially before, this is nothing more than, just keeping everything nice. Bathroom maintenance and things like that, we're going to work on more in protocols with the kids on keeping those every hour. We're going to maybe expand our adult swim, let's call it, to allow for more spraying of touch points and the bathroom and things like that. So the cleaning and maintenance is going to be stepped up this year, obviously, and that'll be a staffing issue, but we're working with folks on staffing, which comes up a little later in the presentation. But, just keep it up. And it's something that, if you're a non-guarded pool, there should be some maintenance. And then, a lot of folks deciding to open or not open is still out there, but needs to be maintained in the meantime. Next. Signage is going to be huge. The pools already have a lot of signs at them. There's going to be more added this year. There's going to be a standard COVID-19 warning. We're having these signs made. They're basically kind of approved by the state. Since we don't have a lot of direction on the counties yet, but it's just a generic sign in terms of COVID warning that it's out there, which everyone knows. But anyway, so that signing will be out there, and then we're going to come up with a custom one that basically deals with your pool hours, your contacts, reminding people that pool capacity, the times it's open, and any other directions that might be signage that comes from a local perspective of a health department, which is still to be determined in a lot of cases. We're also going to put up signage in the bathrooms and stuff from the CDC, reminding you how to wash your hands in case you forgot. 20 seconds. Just ways to protect yourself, and then just CDC warning signs will be posted in common areas and things like that. That's just, it's just to remind people, and also gives the appearance that you're on top of it and you're managing it. So it's just a matter of reminding folks, because that's the biggest thing. At the end of the day, you're an individual, and you're gonna have to live your life in terms of what do you find comfortable, what do you you don't put yourself in a situation that you feel like you're in danger. So these are this different kind of signs that they're kind of talking about. You can't put all this on one sign, so it's just some of these signs will be smaller in terms of they have to be custom, because I think if you notice anything about COVID, it's kind of a moving target. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Don't do this, do this. So take this medicine, don't take that medicine. So everything's kind of up in the air in terms of direction the public is being given. And I think it has to be very fluid. So we're going to do a couple of large signs that are, made up that'll stay unchanged with blanks that may change in terms of capacities and things like that. So they'll have almost like a dry erase feature where you can kind of adjust it based on new directions that we may or may not get. Next. A COVID waiver is encouraged. This is put down by nationals, it's put down by a lot of folks and a lot of lawyers, and everyone are recommending this, and I do too as well, is that, you're basically choosing to go to the pool or use any amenity within your facility or your neighborhood that essentially it's everywhere, and there's no safe place to frankly be, because the minute you touch this or you touch that, you've touched something, could be exposed. So the waiver basically, we can make this available through your property managers or whatever. You can contact us, but they're pretty standard. But you should really go over with your legal team on your HOA to make sure it covers everything. We've given this to our customers. They've brought us back with something else in terms of they've got somebody or that they feel like they need to do something else with it. But it's really, by no means, this is just kind of a generic one, but we encourage everybody to have one. And like the lifeguard pools and things like that, and HOAs are going to ask us to make sure that the people that show up, which should only be residents, which I'll remind everyone of later, no guests this year is not encouraged, but to make sure that everyone has signed that before they can participate at the pool. As for staffing and PPE, CDC guidelines on down is that, monitoring liability waivers and sign-in sheets for contact tracing and things like that. I mean, I forgot to show you this, but just having a sign-in book with waivers in it, just making sure that that's all covered. That cannot be the guard's duty, and to be watching the pool and maintaining, these kind of duties. So we're going through. There's a lot of customers. Just as an example, let's say your pool hours are from 11 to 9, and there's a guard that does a shift, and then a second guard that comes in later does a second shift. We're encouraging our customers to basically, for a couple of reasons, go to like a 12 to 5. So the pool's open for 5 hours of 2 people there. For 2 reasons. We have one person that can manage the paperwork and the protocols, another person actually doing the lifeguarding job. And second of all, it really pushes people to be there during the sunlight days, sunlight time of the day. So your UV is like sanitizing everything as you're at the pool. So I personally feel it's kind of important to, have 2 people on staff and, limit your hours in terms of, keep it during the day and keep it where, it can be staffed properly to do all the things that are going to be different this year. Obviously, PPE will be provided to our employees. They encourage people to wear masks when they're not in the pool. Don't wear it in the pool, otherwise it becomes ineffective, which is pretty obvious. But anyway, those are some things that are out there. But masks are, some people feel strongly about them, some people don't. So it's just one of those things where it's not a law, but it is encouraged. And so we have to tell people to encourage it. Anyway, what we know so far, we just kind of finished the Hot Pool and Hot Tub Alliance highlights. That was with the CDC and our trade group coming up with these kind of suggestions. The CDC put out stuff on water parks, and it basically kind of yielded to the local health departments, and then also it offered some direction, but more about hand hygiene and the kind of the generic CDC stuff. It wasn't, consider lowering the things we talked about, lowering your folks that can be there, the number, bather load, things like that. So it really was there wasn't a whole lot of really tight direction from the CDC, more of sanitation and kind of protocols around that. That Jan also talked about. They're very similar on both things. Missouri's direction has been, the social distancing requirements to, it's only people that, like a lifeguard is allowed to be within 6 feet of somebody because they might have to save them. Obviously, you can't save them with doing air hugs or whatever. So it's something that, those jobs require being within 6 feet of each other. And then basically the hotel and gyms, like we've talked about, they can open with distancing and sanitation protocols, which we're all in the process of doing. St. Charles County, we talked a little bit about, but they're saying the same thing around the CDC, basically, keep everything sanitized as much as you can. The social distancing is very, straightforward. Essentially, and I strongly agree with this, is just not allow guests, frankly. Should be members only or residents only this summer. And then rearranging deck furniture, obviously, if you even decide to put it out, and is not to be discouraged or, not allowed to do that. And then bather load. But St. Charles County has been very straightforward and commonsensical in terms of, everyone knows how to behave essentially under this new normal or whatever we're calling it. St. Louis County, obviously, unfortunately, the first sign they're going to have this year is the pool closed sign. It's not going to open on Memorial Day. All indications are that it'll be mid-June, like the 8th or the 15th, but that can change. They really are watching the caseloads and things like that. And I did raise, in my limited conversations with them, is that, hey, how is it safe to get a haircut 6 inches from someone's face, but not safe to go to the pool where it's outside, sunlight, all the things that kill COVID? Walk me through that, because that's what my customers are asking me. Why is that allowed, but the pool is not? And the argument essentially back was that, or the justification was that people have valued, and it's true. I mean, people want to have a haircut more than go to the swimming pool, or they want to be able to eat or go out to eat or whatever is more important to folks in their minds. And they can't turn everything on at once. Otherwise we don't know where it's coming from. So it has to be a timed turning the light. It's not just flipping a switch for everything. It's their methodology is just slowly open things so you get some direction on how things are going. So it has nothing to do with whatever. Anyway, I'm being pushed along like the Emmys. Key summaries and decisions. Basically, liability waivers is a big decision. I think everyone should have one. Proper signage is going to be key. The social distancing and bather load, we're going to get that out there and put it on a sign. The furniture, does it go out or is it reduced? Those are decisions to be made, between us and an HOA or whatever. Staff and scheduling, we're also working out with folks in terms of, combining shifts and what have you. And then disinfectants. I mean, if you bring your own stuff, are we making disinfectants available at the pool or not for the patrons to use or for everyone to use? And then anyway, also, is there a pool committee or key HOA reps to handle any pool issues this summer? Sometimes it's all, through a management company or whatever, but are there people on the ground that can be reached out to, whatever in a situation or what have you? That'll have to become more pronounced, I believe, this year. And just to summarize, a couple things I forgot to put on here is a lot of folks, maybe not so much booze this year because the more you drink, the more you close talk. So we might want to look at dialing that back. Once again, guests should really probably be discouraged this year. And basically to summarize, it's the liability's out there. I know we have insurance and lawyers coming next. The liability is always there. It's inherent with a swimming pool. It's a risky thing. And I'm just so you know, I'm just as liable as anybody else. And as far as insurance, there's always been the risk of E. coli or other types of waterborne illnesses in swimming pools that, frankly, have never been covered either under your insurance policy. So it's something that the liability's out there in terms of the pool, but it's something that, with the information we have from DHS and things like that, it's probably one of the safer places to be in terms of the sunlight, the humidity, the heat, and the chlorine. The next thing is just kind of the resources we've talked about today. Those will be made available to you in terms of, we talked about the CDC swimming pool guidelines and the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance, but we'll have much more in-depth, slides and stuff like that, but really it's going to come down to your local health department and what your swimming pool company kind of takes away from that and brings to you guys to make decisions and direction on. I think that's it.
Yes, it's Kathy again. Thank you, Brett. We appreciate all that you did. We've got just a little bit about communicating with your residents during COVID-19. Just a reminder about social distancing at the pools or in common areas as they open. And just we got to keep our humor. So just a couple, funny memes happening here. And let's just all throw out 2020 and start over. Now we're going to start our Q&A session. So I invite our panelists all to come back on and share their video again. Stephen and Jim as well, please. And I will start off with a question that we got sent. I believe this one would be for Stephen. So if or when we get to open our community pools, should we be concerned about contact tracking? Should we require daily a sign-in also on any given day? Our pool is small and we have no lifeguards or attendant. So this would be the honor system. Recommendations.
There's a lot of issues that are packed in there. Hi everyone, thanks for having me here. So there's a lot of things you need to consider when you're handling all these things. Is it practical for you to have somebody who can, be there to monitor the gate? What are you going to do about social distancing with that, as you've heard already on this call? And you've also heard about communities collecting acknowledgments and waiver forms and that sort of thing. whether you're going to do that ahead of time before giving someone pool passes, or you're going to do it on a daily basis, that sort of thing, also to consider. So, the general advice on all of this is to review the information and guidance available from your county, your city, the state, to see, and I know we have people perhaps in 2 different states on here, so that's why I kind of go that broad, but see what your governing authorities are saying. Talk with your pool company, your cleaning company for the guidance. Boards, aren't expected to be experts on everything. And that's why you have experts in fields that you can rely upon. So talk to those folks to see what they're doing and what they recommend. And talk to your attorney and your insurer to see how you can handle those things. So, as far as I want to make sure I'm answering the question. So as far as the individual parts about waiver forms and such, and having them sign, I think that's something else. And what was the first part of that, Kathy? I apologize. Long question.
I'm sorry, Stephen. We're just concerned about contact tracking. Should they be concerned with that?
If that's the guidance that the municipality is giving, that's something that you would want to do. If, I haven't seen specifically any guidance right now about contact tracing, but that's obviously an important thing. If that's something that your community wants to do in order to kind of track who's been at the pool in the event of any sort of exposure or transmission amongst people that have visited, that should be part of some sort of broader decision that your community has probably made as far as how would you handle any sort of, if any owner or resident in the community have reported to the board that there was an infection, how would you handle that? And that's something that you can certainly get with your attorney as part of a team to try to figure out a policy and a procedure, a protocol to have in place, and then talk to, Jan or another company like hers that would come in and do any sort of additional cleanings that you might need as a result.
I do have some questions for people that were wanting to have access to the slides. I will send everybody the slides after the webinar is over. So yes, you will get the slides. Diana and Jennifer are helping with the questions. Do one of you guys have a question?
Yeah, there's actually been a couple of questions come through. So one of our managers manages a pool that has a play feature. What, maybe Brett, what do you suggest that they do about the play feature? Should they close it? I mean, it's going to be hard to monitor social distancing at a play feature. Is it something that you recommend closing or allowing people to social distance and police themselves?
At the end of the day, this is going to come down to, oh shoot, am I on? Yeah. Essentially, the play features were not determined. CDC does not say they need to be roped off, unlike one in a park. It's not constantly being hit with chlorinated water and stuff like that. So I mean, it is a touch point, and there's obviously, like anything else you touch, some hazard there. But it's something that, yeah, I mean, if it's a guarded pool, most play features are a guarded pool. So I mean, there could be some social distancing and enforced in terms of blowing the whistle at the kids if they're crowding on the whatever. Or one kid at a time on it, even though it might have multiple levels and what have you. But it's really going to be kind of a field-based decision. There's no directive to shut those things down or what have you. I think there's been some discussion about, this is, like I said, a lot of it is undetermined. So, I mean, there's been some discussion about water parks per se, like a Six Flags or other things, of not opening those up because there's so many handrails, so many things you touch as you climb, and getting on a tube that the other guy just used, those kind of things are, probably not going to be open this summer. But for the thing in the middle of your, zero entry that's spraying water everywhere, I don't see an issue with that. And there has been no direction in terms of roping those off or anything like that yet. So,
okay. So to our guests from O'Fallon or the Creve Coeur mayor, if a municipality opens up their pool or golf course to the public and a citizen alleges that they obtained the coronavirus at the municipal facility because they've stayed quarantined for 2 months and then all of a sudden used the facility, does the municipality have sovereign immunity to protect the municipality's liability?
I don't know per se if we have sovereign immunity. We would defend that action vigorously.
I would agree. I'm not sure about the sovereign immunity, but I would find it hard to believe that someone stayed completely away from every person in the world for 2 months and then decided, let's go swimming. I think our lawyers would be fine with taking that case.
Thank you. So maybe Brett, what is the protocol in respect to an aquatic facility in which someone who is positive with COVID visits the pool?
You say that we find out someone who was there had been positive?
Right.
CDC has guidelines. I have not memorized them yet of what you're supposed to do, but I mean, it really is just spray down the common surfaces, which we'll be doing anyway. And then, you know, anything that they may have had a touch point with or whatever. And then, you know, if the sign-in book has been accurate, you can contact the folks that they came with or whatever around that time frame and just let them know that someone at the pool had it at that time, assuming you're doing good records of sign-ins and stuff. But as for that, I mean, it really comes down to just Jan and everyone else is, if you find someone, there's protocols around that, wiping down the common surfaces and, you know, sanitizing any area they might have been in it. It's just no different than the pork plants we're hearing about all day is, you know, if that guy goes down with COVID, they sanitize that workstation, contact the 2 or 3 people around them. Maybe they quarantine, maybe they don't. They're essential. So now they're going right back again. So it's just a matter of, I've not memorized the specific protocols on that situation, but it really does just come down to resanitizing the common touch points that that person may or may not have had at the facility.
So really a good takeaway for any of our managers or HOAs on the webinar today is that if you have an electronic process of some kind or an unmanned pool, it's very important to have a sign-in book just for tracking purposes for that specific incident. One other question for Brett real quick. With all of the additional monitoring of the pool, additional staff for screening and signage, how much of a percentage of increased cost would you expect on average?
Well, the example I gave on the lifeguards is there's no increased cost because you're essentially consolidating shifts. So those payroll figures are already figured into the contract, if you will, in terms of that. You're working with the hours that you're already budgeted for. So that one, I don't see any difference unless you want to stay open a little later with the 2 people recommendation. If your pool's really small and you have a lifeguard and the bather load is not, you know, it ends up working out to a really small amount of users, then yeah, you can stay with 1 guard because they really potentially could manage both. You know, there's 5 or 6 people there. I mean, a lot of the pools we do, you know, short of a 100-degree day or whatever, aren't that crowded, especially the non-guarded ones. You know, they don't see a massive amount of traffic. And so it's something that, it just depends, but I don't see the cost going to much more. Signage is relatively inexpensive. Sanitation, I mean, if we're doing a little more, you know, Lysol or whatever we're using, we're going to use Lysol, frankly, because it has the best kill time and the less amount of time on the furniture or whatever we're spraying down. So it's just a question of the expense is not going to be exponentially more at all. If you have to staff it, obviously that is expensive. And there's a staffing issue in terms of finding folks to do that. But for the most part, I don't foresee a whole lot of other additional expense. It really depends on the decisions that are made. If you don't set the furniture out, then there's not that much need for more sanitizer, more than what's already there for the bathrooms and everything else. So, you know, the decision on furniture could have a, you know, increased cost in terms of we're having to use a lot more sanitizer to keep the furniture hosed off and what have you. So percentage-wise, I couldn't tell you, honestly, because it just depends on what the county comes up with and everything else. At this point, in St. Charles County, I don't see a whole lot of expense. If the furniture's in check and things like that, and they consolidate shifts, there's no charge there. It's the St. Louis County is going to be the one that'll be probably the, you know, most expensive, frankly, in terms of what they require. So but I have no visibility on what that's going to be yet.
No crystal ball, huh?
I think everybody wants one right now in terms of this entire deal, no matter what line of industry or business you're in or whatever, even as a citizen, to what the future holds.
So this next question is kind of a double up with Stephen and Jim. So we talked about having a waiver for participants to sign. Does a waiver prevent somebody from filing a lawsuit? And if not, what value does the waiver provide to protect us from having to pay a lawyer to defend an HOA?
Stephen, you want to start this out and I'll follow
Happy
up?
Happy to start out. Sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of communities that we represent have been asking us to prepare a release for them to have owners sign, and you saw a waiver form that Brett put up on in the PowerPoint as well. That's something that communities are doing. Will it stop somebody from filing a lawsuit? No. We can't stop somebody from suing you. We can only hope if a board decides to take the step of opening their pool or other amenities in some form, we're basically trying to find ways to lessen or mitigate your risk, to provide tools that you can point to say we did this, that, or the other that are positive steps that you've taken that would help lower the risk. So somebody could still sue you. Our form is including that we would, that they're agreeing that we would receive our prevailing party attorney's fees. Granted, there's a lot of questions about these waiver forms or these release forms and whether they would be able to be upheld in court or not. Now, talking with people, the general thought is you'd rather have one than not have one. But there's no, it's not a cure-all. There's no, this doesn't, remove all liability risk.
Thank you, Stephen. From an insurance standpoint, a waiver is better than none typically when we're defending liability claims against an association. Some of them aren't worth the paper they're written on, so definitely work with your attorney. I would recommend using something with COVID-related language in it for the foreseeable future. Then on the insurance side, there is, this is all new. The insurance industry as a whole, there's no blanket statement whether these claims are going to be covered or not covered. And I would highly recommend you speak with your insurance professional for the HOA or condo as part of this decision-making process, because some policies do have specific communicable disease exclusions. Some have broad bacteria exclusions that may include virus. Some don't. And, we're advising our clients that, we can't guarantee you that you're going to be covered on a blanket basis. I think that, claims should be vigorously defended because it is going to be difficult to define an occurrence. So an occurrence meaning that's what triggers coverage. Could that person prove that it occurred at that pool or at your common facility? And those are the big questions. I'm not aware of any current case law in the states folks here are from. I don't know if Stephen is. Probably not yet. And my guess is some of these things aren't going to be determined until well after this pool season's over. So, if you're nervous about going in saying, I don't know if I have insurance coverage, if your risk tolerance is low, maybe you don't open, but, I don't think that should be the sole part of your decision-making process, whether you have insurance or not.
And I agree with you. It's important to consider your insurance, but, can that be the one thing you consider? No. Talk to your insurer, talk to your attorney. And I also agree with what we heard from the city folks and from Jim there as well, that, that it'll be a tough case to prove where you acquired the transmission of COVID-19 if that happened. And so that's going to be a tough thing. Does that mean that you won't get sued and someone's saying that they got it from your pool? Not necessarily. They still could, even if you have a waiver. And, so I understand the concern is, one, money that will pay any sort of claim, the liability for the claim, and two, the cost of defending you. And so even if they can't prove it, well, you maybe, Jim's saying maybe you will be out of pocket for that, maybe you won't. We just don't know how those insurance policies are going to handle that. So it's a concern, but it's all about deciding where the risk tolerance is for your community and whether you're willing to, if your municipality is allowing you to, if your county is allowing you to open, to do, if you decide to do so, to take certain actions to lessen the risk as much as you can, both for your liability standpoint, but also for the health and safety of your neighbors.
I could chime in. I mean, the pool management company is going to be pretty much one of the first people that they try to go after. So, I mean, we're responsible for, keeping it clean, keeping it chlorinated, all that stuff. And you know, even in the case of E. coli and things like that, we never hear those. We've never been sued for that. It's just because where did you get it? Did you get it from Taco Bell? Did you get it at the pool? You know, I don't know where and that's much easier than COVID, which is everywhere. Everything you touch and whatever. You know, if I was risk intolerant, I'd be in Florida right now fishing. So there's inherent risk with everything we do. I think the swimming pool, to me, is, you know, based on the science, is not a hazard. I think touching things and being close to people is, but it's something that the liability's out there no matter what we do. It's always been out there. It's just a matter of the appetite for it or what have you. And you know, and if it's going to be, you know, too much work, then that's probably a bigger decision than the liability, frankly.
Jennifer, we have time for one more question.
Okay, so this is the crystal ball of all questions. So finding hand sanitizer and ample disinfectants, PPE, has been extremely challenging for all of us. What special connections does the pool company have that you're able to get all of this good stuff? And will you be supplying it to, like, can we as board members and HOA managers expect that those are going to be provided by the pool companies, or should we go out and try to find them ourselves also?
We are a source for that. This is unbelievable how this happened this year, but for this year, I actually, in January, decided to start delivering stuff to our pools in terms of toilet paper and paper towels and all the things you can't find right now. We'd never done it this early before to get it out there to the pools, but we did this year, and thankfully it worked out really well. So we're sitting very long on toilet paper and paper towels and Lysol and things like that. So we're pretty well stocked. Hand sanitizer, we've been able to source through Quick Trip of all places. So it's something that, you know, it's out there. It's just a matter, and we can provide it. It's just a matter of, yeah, it could, if there's another run on it, I think production is starting to catch up with demand on hand sanitizer and a lot of other things. But yeah, we've got all that stuff's already at the pools. It's just a matter of, we're gonna have different bottles out there for different uses and mixed, you know, concentrations and what have you. So yeah, at our pools, we should be good to go. So if there's other questions, just let me know, but I feel like we're pretty well stocked.
Awesome.
Everyone, it's going to have to come to an end. I know there's more questions that we didn't answer. So what I will do is I will include the panelists' email addresses, if it's okay with all of you, so that if there's additional questions, they can just funnel them through you. Thank you guys for all presenting today. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our attendees for calling in. We look forward to seeing you guys at our next webinar. And I hope you guys all stay well.
Bye, thanks.
Hey, Will.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.